In 1974, the United States signed a secret deal with Saudi Arabia that changed the face of the global economy forever. It was a deal that made the green paper dollar stronger than gold itself and gave Washington a magic printing press that never stopped. But today, after 50 years, that deal is beginning to collapse, and the king that once ruled the world, the petrodollar, is now facing the threat of death. If you think this is just political talk, you are mistaken, because the collapse of this system means that every dollar in your pocket, every product you buy, and every economy on Earth could soon enter an inflationary storm unlike anything in modern history. We are now standing in the middle of a massive wealth war that is reshaping the global order in real time. In this video, we will uncover how the greatest financial illusion in modern history was created, why the world accepted it for decades, and why major powers are now preparing for a future where the dollar may no longer dominate the planet. To understand the present, we must return to 1971, the year America unleashed what became known as the Nixon shock. At that moment, the United States was drowning under the pressure of war spending, rising debt, and massive economic strain caused by the Vietnam War and expanding government expenditures. America's gold reserves were rapidly disappearing because countries around the world were exchanging their dollars for physical gold under the Bretton Woods system. Washington realized it could no longer keep its promise. Then came the historic moment. President Richard Nixon appeared before the world and announced that the United States would no longer convert dollars into gold. Overnight, the global financial system was turned upside down. The dollar was suddenly no longer backed by anything tangible, no gold, no silver, nothing, except trust. Confidence in the American currency began to crack, and governments around the world started asking a terrifying question. Why should the global economy depend on paper printed endlessly by a single country? At that moment, the dollar was dangerously close to losing its position as the center of the financial world. But Washington quickly realized that if gold could no longer support the dollar, something even more important had to replace it. That something was oil. Oil was not simply another commodity. It was the fuel powering factories, transportation, electricity, militaries, aviation, shipping, and the entire industrial civilization. Without oil, the modern world stops moving. American strategists understood a brutal reality. If they could control the currency used to buy oil, they could indirectly control the global economy itself. This is where Henry Kissinger entered the stage. The legendary strategist and master of geopolitical negotiations traveled to Saudi Arabia with an offer that would reshape history. The proposal was simple but revolutionary. America would provide military protection, advanced weapons, security guarantees, and political support for the Gulf monarchies. In return, Saudi Arabia would price all of its oil exports exclusively in US dollars and reinvest its enormous oil profits into American financial markets and treasury bonds. Saudi Arabia accepted the agreement, and soon the rest of OPEC followed. From that moment, the dollar was reborn. It was no longer backed by gold hidden in vaults. It was now backed by the most important resource on Earth, flowing through pipelines, ports, and tankers across the globe. The petrodollar system had officially been born. The consequences were enormous. Every nation that needed oil, meaning virtually every nation on Earth, now needed dollars first. Germany needed dollars, Japan needed dollars, China needed dollars, developing nations needed dollars. This created endless global demand for the American currency. Suddenly, the United States possessed something no empire in history had ever enjoyed before: the ability to print money endlessly while the rest of the world worked to earn it. Think about how extraordinary this system really was. Countries had to manufacture products, extract resources, export goods, or borrow money in order to obtain dollars. But the United States itself could simply create dollars electronically and exchange them for real goods, real oil, and real assets. The world was effectively producing wealth, while the United States consumed it using paper backed by global trust. Even more astonishing was the financial cycle created by the petrodollar system. The dollars spent by America on oil purchases did not disappear. oil exporting countries recycled those dollars back into the US economy by buying treasury bonds, investing in Wall Street, and storing reserves inside American banks. This meant America could run massive deficits, spend trillions on wars, expand military bases worldwide, and continue printing money without facing immediate collapse. In many ways, the petrodollar became the invisible engine behind American global dominance. It financed aircraft carriers, military alliances, technological innovation, and the rise of the United States as the unquestioned superpower of the post-Cold War era. Wall Street grew into the financial capital of the world because the entire global economy revolved around the dollar. But every empire eventually becomes overconfident, and history shows that dominant powers often collapse not because enemies destroy them from outside, but because they misuse their own strength. Washington's biggest mistake was transforming the dollar into a geopolitical weapon. Using the SWIFT payment system, sanctions, and control over global banking networks, the United States began to punish countries that challenged its policies. Nations that refused to obey Washington suddenly found themselves locked out of international trade, unable to access dollar transactions, or cut off from global markets entirely. Over time, many governments realized something deeply dangerous. The global financial system was no longer neutral. It had become a battlefield controlled by one power. Then came the turning point that terrified the world. When the war in Ukraine erupted, the United States and its allies froze hundreds of billions of dollars belonging to Russia's foreign reserves. In a single moment, governments across the planet received a chilling message. Your reserves are only safe as long as you remain politically aligned with Washington. This single event may eventually be remembered as the beginning of the end for the petrodollar era.
China immediately accelerated its long-term strategy to weaken dependence on the dollar. Beijing understood that relying on an American-controlled financial system represented a strategic vulnerability. As the world's largest industrial power and largest energy importer, China began building alternative financial networks, signing energy agreements in yuan and increasing gold purchases at record levels. The rise of the petro-yuan marked one of the most important geopolitical developments of the decade. China started convincing major oil producers to accept yuan payments instead of dollars. Russia, under heavy sanctions, rapidly embraced the shift. Iran also increased non-dollar trade. India began purchasing Russian oil using rupees and alternative settlement systems. Brazil expanded direct trade with China using local currencies instead of the dollar. And perhaps the most shocking development of all was the changing tone coming from Saudi Arabia itself. For decades, Saudi Arabia had been the foundation of the petrodollar order, but now the kingdom started openly discussing the possibility of accepting multiple currencies for oil transactions. That single change may sound small, but in reality, it represents a geopolitical earthquake, because once oil can be traded freely in different currencies, the monopoly of the dollar begins to weaken. At the same time, the BRICS alliance, led by China and Russia, started openly discussing the creation of alternative payment systems and even the possibility of a future shared currency backed by commodities such as gold or strategic resources. Whether such a currency succeeds or not, the message is clear. The world is actively searching for an escape route from dollar dependency. And this creates a terrifying question for the United States. If countries no longer need massive dollar reserves to buy energy, who will continue financing America's exploding debt? U.S. national debt has now surpassed $34 trillion, and the American financial system depends heavily on constant foreign demand for treasury bonds. A significant decline in global dollar demand could place enormous pressure on the entire American economic model. Now let us talk about the nightmare scenario feared by economists and central bankers alike. If the petrodollar system weakens dramatically, trillions of dollars currently circulating outside the United States could begin flowing back into the American economy. For decades, the global system absorbed excess dollars because nations needed them for trade and energy purchases. But if that demand fades, America could face a flood of currency returning home with nowhere to go. The result could be a historic inflation crisis. Prices of food, energy, housing, transportation, and basic goods could rise uncontrollably. The purchasing power of the dollar could decline sharply. The standard of living that many Western economies enjoyed for decades may come under severe pressure. But while this transition threatens old powers, it also creates enormous opportunities elsewhere. We are witnessing one of the greatest wealth transfers in modern history. Economic gravity is slowly shifting toward nations that control manufacturing, natural resources, strategic minerals, energy production, and industrial capacity. The balance of power is gradually moving eastward. In many ways, today's moment resembles the final years of the British Empire, when the pound sterling slowly lost its dominance after World War II and the dollar replaced it as the center of global finance. But this time, the transformation may unfold much faster because information, markets, and capital move instantly in the digital age. The petrodollar was never just about economics. It was about influence, military power, political leverage, and global control. And now, for the first time in half a century, the foundations of that system are visibly shaking. At the same time, a new financial world is emerging. Central bank digital currencies are being tested across multiple countries. Gold is rapidly returning as a strategic reserve asset. Nations are signing barter agreements and bypassing Western banking systems. Regional alliances are becoming more economically independent. The rules that governed the global economy for decades are being rewritten before our eyes. The wealth wars of the 21st century will not only be fought with missiles, tanks, and aircraft carriers. They will also be fought through currency systems, energy contracts, semiconductor supply chains, digital payment networks, and control over global trade routes. Financial warfare is becoming just as important as military warfare. And now the real question becomes personal. Are you prepared for a world where the dollar may no longer be the unquestioned king of global finance? What happens to savings, investments, purchasing power, and global markets during such a massive transformation? And which nations will emerge stronger from this new economic battlefield? One thing is certain, the world is entering a historic uncertainty unlike anything we have seen in generations. The era of uncontested American financial dominance may not end tomorrow, but for the first time in decades, the possibility of a post-dollar world is no longer science fiction. It is becoming part of real geopolitical strategy. Share your opinion in the comments. Do you believe China's yuan or a future BRICS currency could truly challenge the dominance of the US dollar? Or do you think the dollar will remain the backbone of the global economy for decades to come? Your perspective is what drives these deep discussions forward. And if you found this analysis valuable and want to understand the hidden forces shaping the future of global power and money, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Wealth Wars. Here, we uncover the hidden mechanics behind wealth, geopolitics, and the global struggle for dominance. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next analysis of the world's great power conflicts.